Of all the gifts one can bestow, forgiveness feeds the heart to grow, because nothing nourishes the soul like the release of what was once too heavy to carry. Do good in all things, great and small. We have said it before. Anytime we are acting in conscious choice to do good, mind, body, and soul, towards the path to transcendence and ascension, we are walking its path. Every act that nourishes body, mind, and soul, physically, ethically, spiritually, with the intention to do good, becomes part of the path. We have talked about the path in metaphor and analogy, stepping stones and hurdles, but it is more than that. Waking up and telling yourself a simple mantra like, "Today I will seek enlightenment and do good in all things, great and small." Walking and thinking about the mysteries of the universe. Donating your time, money, or effort to a like-minded cause. Going to the gym with the intention of being healthy as part of that path to enlightenment is part of the path to enlightenment. Every step we take, every breath can be part of that path with the intention to walk it, and the motivation to be better, to do good, is part of our journey. But what happens when we forget? When despite our best intentions, we fall short? When we stray from the light, what brings us back? This is episode 6 of Transcendence, our shared journey. I am Scott Layton, a fellow traveler on the journey. Welcome. Today we are going to discuss when we stumble from the path, when our intentions are wrong, when our motivations are wrong, when our actions do not serve us, others, or our shared home, the planet which sustains us, and how forgiveness feeds the heart to grow and lead us back to the path. Sometimes along the path we do stumble, the darkness penetrates our mind and blinds our step, the weather may change suddenly and fiercely, and we may need to seek shelter. Sometimes we want for sustenance and find none, and we may leave the path to seek it before we return. Sometimes from without or within the brambles ensnare us, the thickets nick us, the web of lies entangle us, and we need to heal. When we stumble from our own actions or inactions, when our minds are muddied by self-doubt or recrimination, when our motives are not just, our intentions unworthy, we need to seek forgiveness, reconciling us back to the path, seek redemption, and cleanse our hearts, our minds, and our bodies in renewal before we can continue our journey and begin again. Forgiveness is how we rejoin the path when we fall off it. Forgiveness, true forgiveness, is not merely the lifting of blame. It is the mending of rupture. It is not just saying, "It's okay," but saying, "Come back, begin again. You are still worthy of the journey." Forgiveness is an act of mercy, yes, but it is also an act of clarity when our motivations, intentions, and actions keep us from alignment. It clears away the clutter we carry, the burdens that keep us hunched and weary. It is the difference between dragging your feet through the journey, shackled by shame, and walking with your head lifted, heart soft, and hands open. And that is where reconciliation begins. Take a breath. Let this settle. Now let's go deeper into the heart of reconciliation. Forgiveness opens the door, but reconciliation is the walk through it. The restoration of what was broken, the healing of relationship. It does not always mean returning to how things were. Often, it means creating something new. Sometimes the reconciliation is with another. Sometimes it's with the past. And sometimes, most quietly, it is reconciliation with yourself. The moment you say, "I am not the worst thing I have done," that act of return is also the beginning of redemption. Redemption is not earning your worth back. It's living in such a way that you reveal the worth that was never lost. It is the journey of transformation, of becoming not just forgiven, but renewed. It is the soul rising up from ashes, not pretending the fire didn't happen, but allowing the flame to forge something stronger, something clearer. And what allows this renewal to take root is intention. Forgiveness without intention is fragile. It cracks under pressure. But forgiveness anchored in the deep desire to change, to grow, to learn, to love better, becomes strong. Intention says, "This matters. I want to turn." Intention points your feet toward the path. Motivation gives you the strength to walk it. Intention whispers, "This is who I want to be." Motivation adds, "So I will try again." And then comes cleansing, the shedding of guilt, the washing away of the grime we've carried in secret. This is not just spiritual, it's psychological, even physical. We feel it in our bodies, the breath that deepens, the shoulders that relax, the tears that fall. In Catholic tradition, this is echoed in the sacrament of reconciliation, not as mere ritual, but as renewal. Confession is not about punishment. It's about returning, beginning again, feeling the weight lift, walking out lighter. All of this, reconciliation, redemption, renewal, cleansing, is the deeper architecture of forgiveness. It is not a moment, it is a movement, a turning of the soul back toward the light. Across faiths, forgiveness is not weakness, it is strength. In Christianity, forgiveness is the very heart of the gospel. Not just something God does, but something we are called to embody. Jesus taught us to pray, "Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us." It is both gift and command, a reciprocal flow of grace. He washed the feet of the one who would betray him. He hung on the cross and said, "Father, forgive them," not because we deserved it, but because he chose to love without condition. But forgiveness in the Christian life does not stand alone. It walks hand in hand with reconciliation and redemption. To forgive is to make peace, not just outwardly, but within. And to be redeemed is to be restored, bought back from the brink, not through our merit, but through mercy. This is where confession, or the sacrament of reconciliation, becomes central for Catholics. And for those unfamiliar, it is not a courtroom or a ritual of humiliation. It is not about guilt as punishment, but guilt as a signal, a holy discomfort that invites us to turn back. Confession is not about shame. It is about freedom. It is a returning, a cleansing, a lifting of the weight that we were never meant to carry. It is not simply saying, "I was wrong." It is hearing in response, "You are still loved. Begin again." When done honestly and with humility, confession is like stepping out of a storm into shelter, like laying down your burdens at the edge of a clear stream and being washed in living water. It is not transactional, it is transformational, a moment of realignment where the soul remembers who it is. For those who have never experienced it, imagine having the deepest parts of yourself, the guilt you bury, the fears you hide, received not with disgust, but with mercy. That is the heart of reconciliation. It's not only God who meets us there. We meet ourselves again, not as fractured or condemned, but as beloved and made whole. I'll admit, and I'll do a separate video on this topic, I have had a difficult time with confession. I know many in the faith have, and for a long time I avoided it. I didn't recognize the gift that it was, nor the feeling of burden lifted until I returned to it. In choosing and allowing myself to be forgiven and accepting that forgiveness, I felt a joy in my heart and soul that I can't easily explain. And even outside of religion, the idea holds that speaking your wrongs aloud in safe and sacred spaces frees the soul to try again. Forgiveness, then, is not a weak letting go. It is a courageous return. It feeds the heart to grow, yes, but even more, it frees the heart to rise. In every sacred tradition, forgiveness isn't a soft sentiment. It is a practice, a process, a return to alignment with the divine, with one another, and with our truest self. Take, for instance, the Jewish tradition. Forgiveness there is not abstract. It is rooted in tangible action. During Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, repentance is not complete without teshuvah, which means return. It's a spiritual homecoming, yes, but not one accomplished by feeling sorry alone. One must make amends, repair the breach, ask for forgiveness from others and from God, not with empty words, but with humility and resolve to change. Forgiveness in Judaism is a path walked with steps: recognition, remorse, restitution, and transformation. It is a renewal of the covenant of right relationship, not just a wiping away of guilt. From that sense of return, we move into the sacred rhythms of Islam, where tawbah also means to return. The Quran says, "Indeed, Allah loves those who are constantly repentant." The beauty of this concept is in its intimacy. Forgiveness isn't transactional, it's relational. The soul turns back toward the one who created it. The stains of sin are not permanent. They are washed away by sincere intention and action. In Sufism, this turning is also inward, to remove the veils that obscure our vision of the divine in others. Forgiveness is not just release, it is the reawakening of vision, of seeing beauty again where pain once lived. It is the cleansing of the heart so that it may once again reflect the face of God. And then there is Buddhism, which speaks not in terms of sin, but of attachment, ignorance, and aversion, the sources of suffering. Here, forgiveness is liberation. It is the loosening of the mind's grip on grievance, the recognition that holding on to harm is its own form of suffering. Forgiveness becomes a meditative practice, a gradual, compassionate release, not just of others, but of the self. You are not the harm you caused. They are not the harm they did. To forgive is to untangle from that illusion and walk with less burden. In this way, intention is everything. You do not need to condone the act. You need only release the chain it wrapped around your spirit. Outside the religious, the psychological understanding of forgiveness affirms what the spiritual has long known, that letting go is healing. Forgiveness is not a reward for the other person, it is a mercy for yourself. Study after study shows that forgiveness lowers anxiety, reduces cortisol, even improves sleep. But even more importantly, it renews your relationship with yourself. It allows for self-compassion, and it invites a kind of ethical cleansing, the clearing of the fog between who you are and who you long to be. Even in philosophy, the necessity of forgiveness has been echoed across ages. Hannah Arendt called it the only way to interrupt the chain of consequences history otherwise binds us to. Without forgiveness, we are condemned to repetition, trapped in a cycle of grievance. But with forgiveness, the future opens. It becomes possible again. It does not erase the harm, it refuses to be governed by it. Forgiveness becomes an existential reset, the human power to begin anew. And though practices differ, the heart of forgiveness is remarkably universal. Intention to return, motivation to heal, cleansing through reflection, redemption through choice, reconciliation as a bridge back to love. Whether through a prayer whispered at night, or a note burned in a fire and released to the wind, or words spoken through tears and humility, each act of forgiveness reclaims something holy, our capacity to be made new. So much of this feels noble in theory, but what about in practice, in the rawness of real life? How do we forgive? Sometimes it starts in humble silence, in prayer, in asking for the strength we don't yet have. And sometimes it starts in words, simple ones. I'm sorry. Or even harder, I forgive you. Not always because they asked, not always because they'll change, but because we no longer want to carry what they did. We are not defined by what was done to us. We are not anchored to every wrong turn we've taken. Forgiveness is cutting the rope and choosing to walk free. Forgiving yourself is often the hardest part. That voice inside, the one that calls you fake, unworthy, too far gone, isn't truth. It's fear masquerading as shame. But here's what's true. If you weren't still meant to walk this path, you wouldn't still be here. The invitation still stands. Begin again. Forgiveness clears the path. But that doesn't mean it erases the journey behind us. Our mistakes leave their imprint, but they also leave their lesson. They're the soil where growth begins. The Beatitudes. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the pure in heart. Aren't just lofty poetry. They are the architecture of a new way of being, a way that begins again and again in mercy. Sometimes forgiveness comes through prayer, spoken, sung, whispered in solitude. Sometimes it comes through meditation, the quiet returning to the breath, to now, letting the past dissolve like mist. And sometimes it comes through action, writing the letter, making the call, offering service, holding space. Sometimes it's lighting a candle in a church or temple. Sometimes it's watching the stars and saying nothing, but meaning everything. Forgiveness is not passive. It is not permission. It is reorientation back toward the light, back toward the path. Forgiveness does not mean remaining in harm or abandoning justice. It is not a command to stay in toxic relationships, to excuse abuse, to silence your pain, or to numb it with vice. It does not demand forgetting what was done. It invites a choice to release the grip that pain holds on your future. Forgiveness is not passive acceptance. It is the active choice to reclaim your power. The refusal to let another's wrongdoing define your worth, your identity, or your direction. And justice? Forgiveness does not cancel it. In fact, they are not opposites. They are companions. Justice is the pursuit of repair. Forgiveness is the pursuit of release. One seeks accountability, the other freedom. You can choose both, and often you must. Think of it like a lantern, one you carry and offer to others. Sometimes you light your own way. Sometimes you lift it so someone else can see. Sometimes you place it at a fork in the road where someone behind you may stumble. And what of the reward? To forgive is not to forget justice, but it is to remove vengeance from your heart, to make room again for joy, for movement, for clarity. It is to feel the full weight of your story and still choose to walk forward, not out of pride or denial, but out of grace. Forgiveness, then, is not the end of the path. It is the turn, the return, the crossing of a threshold from despair to possibility. And so, when we stumble, as we all will, may we remember that forgiveness is not weakness, but alignment. It is the great reset of the soul, the invitation to keep walking. Picture yourself on a darkened road. In your hand, the lantern of forgiveness. You turn. You begin again. The path returns to view. Until next time, walk with mercy. Ask yourself, who have I not forgiven, including myself? And what might be waiting for me on the other side of that forgiveness? In the next episode, we'll look at the more concrete practices that ground the transcendent. Prayer, meditation, ritual, silence, presence. The acts that make the path not just visible, but walkable. Let go of the story that says you must carry your guilt alone. There is no salvation in pride, only mercy and surrender. Begin again. But for now, sit with this. Of all the gifts one can bestow, forgiveness feeds the heart to grow. And with a heart that grows, you will rise. And as you rise, remember, we walk the journey together. We all belong to the path and to the sacred and sublime when we remember to forgive ourselves and others of our transgressions and our failings along the way. No matter where you are on the journey, even here, even now, you can be restored. You are not alone and never were. Peace.
I walk this road with a heavy mind, carried my wrongs through dust and time. Every step felt hard and long. I stumbled down, I turned away, lost my light, lost my way, but mercy found me where I lay, said, child, you still can stay, bring me home, bring me home where I belong. I ain't the worst thing I've done, I'm the turning, not the roll. I forgave what bound my soul. Now I'm walking home. Bring me home, bring me home where I've been. I'm standing free, I understand. I understand, I forgive, I forgive. I walk